Welcome back to our third game of the day, and this one pits 100 Thieves up against Immortals. Only 2 games separate these two teams in the standings, and 100 Thieves will look to regain their form, while Immortals try to squeeze their way into playoffs, although the task is now more difficult than before, with evil geniuses right above them just taking the win.
Yeah, they have a difficult schedule. 100 Thieves, though, on the other side have gone 3-3 in their last 2 weeks, including 1-2 last weekend with Ryoma. It feels like it's been a bit of a downhill trend for 100 Thieves since lock-in. They're not performing at the level that we have expected. They went from, I think, what a lot of people were considering potentially championship contenders to, well, how are they going to finish? Are they going to be even upper bracket in the playoffs? So they really want to show that improvement. They really want to build that confidence in the squad going into playoffs. And on the other side, Immortals basically feels like they need to win out. And this game, I think, is going to prove if they can contend with these playoff teams that are above them in the standings. Have you developed enough as a team? Because this is about as easy as it gets, right? They've got to beat 100 Thieves today. They have TSM and C9 coming up, which is going to be potentially even more challenging. There are 2 teams that are above 100 Thieves in the standings. So Immortals really has their work cut out for them here, but they are the closest team on the outside looking in to playoffs right now. So they've got the best shot.
They've got to bring their A game here today. That TSM C9 lineup, of course, after the outcome of the previous 2 games, doesn't seem as scary as it would have coming into this weekend because both of those teams had a rather bumpy start to week 6 here. Yep. But we still can't count out how good they look when they are at their best. So Immortals knows that they've got to come to play in each and every one of these games. 100 Thieves, easily the most vulnerable of those 3 opponents that they have here this weekend. This team feels like they've sort of lost their identity. They don't quite have everything on the same page. It seems like they don't always know where to be. Things have been confusing for the 100 Thieves roster here for the past few weeks, Azale.
I mean, they went from playing so heavily towards side lanes, Galio, TF priority, push out lanes, roam to the side, TP in, dive the lane, play heavily through that. These preset plays that were executed flawlessly. That is what 100 Thieves became known for in lock-in and in early spring. They have strayed from that quite a lot here. And we'll see, if they want to continue more along the style that they showed with Ryoma last week. He did have a fantastic Silas game, but generally speaking, people are like, okay, well, you're bringing in Ryoma. That means you want to play control. You want to play slower. You want to play, these Ziers, the Corkis, the Orianas of the world. So it'll be interesting to see if they go more down that path or kind of continue with what we saw from that Silas game, which is a bit of a more aggressive look and more what we were used to seeing from 100 Thieves.
Okay, what do we got here? Seraphine, Tristana, Lilia, Hecarim, Udyr, and Olaf all banned away. So no Tristana here in this game. Rel is still open. So we'll see if 100 Thieves want to prioritize that as a first pick. We've seen it go first or second rotation pretty much every single time. What will it be here for the Thieves? Renekton, first pick for someday.
Well, now it feels like you'd want to be pairing that with Nidalee, so I wonder if Immortals will try to take that away and maybe find some own strong pairing of their own, because there are so many jungle bans, especially if you want to have an AP jungler. It really does feel like Nidalee is the next obvious one. Below Nidalee and Lilia, there's a lot of champions that we really haven't seen much or haven't seen in a long time. Things like Elise or Talia. Fiddle never really gets any play. It is going to be Sion as the immediate answer to that top lane. So just trying to withstand the onslaught up there from Someday, who has been strong on the champion, and considering at least to take away that Nidalee from closer. So they will grab the Nidalee for themselves, but it's not as though Sion plus Nidalee is a really aggressive pairing. So we'll have to see if they want to set up for success through some of the other lanes, maybe some sort of point and click stun or something in mid lane. But 100 Thieves going back to the Talia. So Talia is something that was dominating LCS and pro play really overall. It did take some nerfs, I do believe, a while ago now, but this was a pairing that had something like an 80% win rate across pro play for a while.
So
good. The Talia, Nidalee, those were the 2 that were being traded back and forth, but Talia plus Renekton was so good. Talia also combos very, very well with that TF, and this is more the kind of draft that you would expect to see if Demonte was in the lineup, right? Yeah. Going towards the side lanes, Talia can do the same thing. You can show up 3 members top, look for dives. You have setup in both of these top side lanes. You expect 100 Thieves with this type of draft to potentially go for a more defensive bottom side and be wanting to play through Renekton. But they're not locked into that. Of course, you could still use the TF and that Talia to go down towards the bottom lane and try to snowball there. But I just think now that you've drafted in the Renekton, you don't really want him playing weak side. You generally want to really try to snowball that lane.
And I love what you brought up about the hard CC in both of these lanes to enable Talia. If at any point Closer can gank those lanes, it's so simple for a point-and-click stun to guarantee either a seismic shove into a kill or force out the flash to avoid it. So the draft in the first half looking solid for them. On the other side, we do have some powerful CC and front line in the form of Sion and the Thresh with that Nidalee right behind them. Marksman bans coming out for 100 Thieves as Lucian and Jinx are both banned away, while Immortals say we've got our support and you don't, so let's take out some of the tanky ones here. Man. Nautilus and Alistar are banned out. Rel still on the table in terms of those engaged tanky supports as Ryze is locked in for Immortals.
It's surprising to see so many, bans being thrown towards Marksman, on the 100 Thieves side, but Kai'Sa is still left up. Senna, you could do fasting Senna here, if you want to play that passive bottom lane style. I think this makes a lot of sense. You can also see the ability to help play towards that top lane, with the Senna ultimate coming across, enabling dives up on that top side. The potential ultimates coming through here from Tahm Kench to move to those side lanes as well. It's not going to be Urgot. You're getting trolled. I can see your face.
That's what my eyebrows for. I'm waiting to see what it turns into instead.
Okay, Caitlyn Thresh would make sense.
Right.
You do have the setup. If you land the hook, you drop the trap as the follow-up. You can flay them into the traps as well. Pretty good push and poke. There is the ability to try to really siege heavily here. But I will say, the Tahm Kench is going to keep the Senna fairly safe, and Senna should be able to trade fairly evenly against the Caitlyn. This is a fairly long-range champion, especially if you're doing fasting Senna. You can really focus on the harass while Caitlyn has the CS, and sometimes means you're going to be taking the bad end of those trades. So it will be interesting to see if it's going to be a farming Senna or a fasting Senna. I tend to think that the more support style, the farming Tahm Kench, is better because you just get so many more souls generated in those early levels, and that really is where so much of Senna's power is so far. But
and I feel like
on the other side, go ahead.
We got what you wanted from 100 Thieves Draft in the first half, because you said you wanted a bot lane that was able to play defensively. Not only do you get a defensive bot lane, but when you look at the champions on 100 Thieves, 4 out of 5 of those champions have a global or semi-global ultimate to move around the map and help their allies. The one who doesn't have that is an incredibly strong 1v1 side lane champion piloted by a dude named Someday, who's been a top 3 top laner in this league ever since he joined it. So the ability for 100 Thieves to play around him this game, I think, is massive.
It really is. It feels like it's all about that. So it'll be interesting, right? Because there's going to be the questions of, all right, well, if you're going to play this style, why isn't Demonte in? So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on Ryoma to really perform well on this pick that the person he replaced was known for. And on the other side, I like the Ryze. I think that the Ryze does give some of that setup to Nidalee. You want to be keeping TF under his tower, right? That's one of the answers that we've seen. Tristana has been brought in as an answer to the TF to just try to constantly push, constantly try to pressure. Of course, Ryze doesn't do that as well in the early game as it Tristana, but once you get some items, once you get some levels, you can clear those waves out instantly. And you also have the empowered root for the setup for the Nidalee Spear. So there's a combo there, plus the Realm Warp to potentially match some roams coming out from TF. So I think mid lane is going to be key.
Yeah, mid lane's super important. And then even thinking up to the top side, I mean, I applauded the 100 Thieves Draft for having a conditional, hard to hit skill shot AP in the jungle, and then with 2 enablers with CC in the solo lanes. The same thing can be said for Immortals. It's slightly more difficult to get the CC. You have to have either the empowered root or Sion has to hit you with a charged up enough Q or his ulti, so it's not quite just the point and click, but there's still a lot of playmaking opportunity there for either side. And so both of these junglers, I want to see who pops off harder, because either one of them could take over the game with proper setup.
Definitely true, and it is going to be a very important game for these two teams here. Immortals, a loss feels like it all but locks them out of playoffs. Depending on head-to-heads, it might actually lock them out. 100 Thieves, of course, trying to pick up as many wins as possible. A lot of teams, in that playoff picture are getting so close. So yes, 100 Thieves has been on a bit of a downward trend, but I mean, for a team like them, you're sitting at 9 wins, I believe. If you win out here, you could still get first, right? Like Cloud9 dropped a game, TSM dropped a game. All these teams are not that far ahead. So first place, upper bracket, very well within reach if 100 Thieves can have a strong weekend.
And it's worth pointing out again, just as we're waiting to load into the game here, about the overall playoff structure. Remember, top 6 get to go into the midseason showdown, but it's all about being top 4. because if you're in top 4, you start in the upper bracket. 5 and 6 start in that lower bracket already, which means one single loss in a best of 5, you're out. As long as you make top 4, you get a bit of forgiveness. If you lose that first series, you can still redeem yourself and make your way through the lower bracket. Remember, this is what we saw from TSM previously when they won Summer last year. TSM got smacked upside the head in the first round. But then that was a wake-up call. Got their marbles all straight up there. They decided that they were going to end up making that run through the bottom bracket, and they get all the way to the championship and they win it. So just having that little bit of extra leeway, having that opportunity for forgiveness and for learning from having a bad series can be the difference maker between getting yeeted out in the first round and winning the whole thing.
All right, well, we are unfortunately going to have to pause this matchup for the moment, so we're going to toss it over to the analyst desk, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you very much, Azael. Now, due to some safety concerns for some of our teams here, we are going to be delaying the face-off between 100 Thieves and Immortals for the moment. There's an evacuation taking place currently at the Immortals facility, but they're relocating, and they'll be back with us soon. In the meantime, let's talk about what we've seen so far, which is a completed draft at the very least. So we're going to try and pull that up on the screen, at least the team comps themselves. Initial reactions. Alorum?
Well, I think that hold on, let Cage will go. He put the period in. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think
get in here.
there's a lot of interesting things in the draft, right? The Renekton was first picked away, which is very interesting, and then they pick away the Nidalee, which makes sense, right? Renekton Nidalee, one of the strongest combos, and Talia has actually fallen off a little bit in the meta because in 11.3 she got her Q nerfed to monsters. She lost a little bit of move speed as well, so I think the scaling of the move speed came in. She lost Q to monster. I think that was the nerf that actually happened to Talia. But Closer actually picked it up, and then they went with the TF. So double globals in the mid jungle with a Renekton top. Lots to snowball for. And then IMT's response was good. I think the Thresh pick was good. Obviously, if they use the ult towards bot, you can play Lantern. Serity carries most of the time pretty safe. I think the draft got a bit confusing in a way where they banned out Nautilus Alistar, which didn't make too much sense to me because Nautilus makes sense. I would have imagined like a Blitzcrank ban could have been pretty good. Senna Time comes in. Time Kench obviously going into Thresh. And then Ryze is kind of like a counter pick in a way to the TF. It's very common in Europe to pick Ryze into TF. You win the lane, you win the side lane, and you can react to his plays with your ultimate, obviously. And then the Caitlyn came in. So lane Kingdom for the side of IMT on bot side. You can have the Ryze Nidalee, which is a strong jungle mid matchup that can sort of match the globals. But yeah, I'm looking at 100 Thieves. You know, it's very... You can see the two win conditions of the team, right? You have two globals in mid jungle on one side for a Renekton. On the other side, you have like a really strong mid jungle with a Caitlyn Thresh. So the Senna Time Kench's weak side on one team, the Sion's weak side on the other team, two clear win conditions.
I mean, it's a great analysis of the team comps. Got to talk about the players, though. That's kind of the other ingredient. And you got Ryoma in. This is so weird to see, I think, for a lot of 100 Thieves fans because, you know, this was the Demonte kind of drafts that you're seeing at the start of lock-in when they were incredible. And I still think that they are good drafts. I don't want to say that they're not, but it is one of those things where at this point, it sounds like it's less of a champ pool issue that they might be having, or maybe these were just banned if this was Demonte in there. But I know this will be something that will be discussed quite a bit on social media and stuff like that about, oh, it's Ryoma in there, but they're having this, this look of their comps.
Yeah, and it feels like 100 Thieves are starting to put all the eggs back into the someday basket right now. They first picked Renekton, which is a little questionable, but if we see that their comp, how it plays out, they have the Talia, which is very clear. Renekton Talia, it's a very easy dive when you have the level 3, level 4 shove in, because while Immortals counterpicked with Sion does not get the shove from Renekton. He actually gets shoved in, and the one benefit that you have there is that he can usually survive for a while, and he has good team fight. But on top of that, you add the Twisted Fate in there, and I am crying if I'm Revenge. I've got my handkerchief out too, and I'm wiping the sweat off my forehead when I'm playing against Renekton, Talia, and Twisted Fate. I'm scared for him, and if I'm 100 Thieves, or if I'm Immortals rather, I know 100% the plan is go top as soon as possible, and we'll see if they can, because with Demonte, they were so good at executing these level 3, level 4 dives. But with Ryoma, I'm assuming they'd have a little bit more practice with Control Mage 5v5 style, so it'll be interesting to see if Ryoma can do what Demonte had when he was still on the team.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I think all the eggs are in the someday basket. Not only does he have TF Talia's the globals to collapse. He also has a Senna ult across the whole map. And when Tahm Kench hits level 11, that's another global. So you're looking at 4 globals here. So yeah, if you're talking about eggs in a basket, they're definitely in some days. And I think this is a 1-3-1 comp, obviously. They have globals from mid. But I think the difference between these drafts and the last draft we saw with the 1-3-1 from EG is the fact that IMT actually have the Rise. So the Rise can actually match the TF. It can match the Renekton if it needs to. And it has the Nidalee, which is a high tempo jungle that can cover it. Not only that, but you also have Caitlyn Thresh, which should get the mid push. So IMT have a lot more to work with than TSM did. They have a lot more 1v1 potential, push potential in mid to collapse onto sides. So there'll be a lot of cross mapping in this game, I think, where you'll see Sion give up waves. Maybe he'll lose his tower, whereas the Caitlyn Thresh will get plates in the center time, will have to give up. So this is going to be a battle between can Someday carry with 4 globals, or can IMT's mid jungle start to neutralize the side lanes and let the Raze and Destiny take over the game with the Caitlyn Thresh?
It's really just.
Sorry.
I have
Go
one
ahead.
more point. It's really just a weak side versus weak side because, and I feel like I have to give the advantage over to 100 Thieves mainly because of the ease of the comp. It's very easy to play champions like Renekton and TF, and you have the point and click for Talia. And if Revenge does not play the top lane well enough, he can get 100 to 0'd at a moment's notice if he does not give up waves and they don't see it maybe 30 seconds to a minute in advance. While when you have Senna Tahm Kench, it's very easy to play back and you have a lot of tools to survive. Even if you're taking damage, you can heal up through the Senna Qs or you can heal up through the gray health from Tahm Kench. So in terms of ease of comp, I've got to give it to 100 Thieves, but Immortals, if they really want to win this, I think that they have to get the Rise very far ahead. And I'm glad that he brought Cleanse because we've seen some mid laners not bring Cleanse versus Twisted Fate before and it's gone very poorly. So Summoner Spell is correct this time, and if they want to win, they have to get Rise ahead for side lane.
Yeah, albeit with a different mid laner this time around for 100 Thieves, a bit of a return to the same style or the style that we knew them for from earlier in the split. I do just want to take a moment to give an update to all of you at home as I am receiving more information on the situation at hand. The evacuation itself, is related to a fire alarm going off in the same building. I want to confirm that everyone is okay. It's just a precaution, and players are already en route to their residence, which is close by, to reconnect to the game. And so, again, we're on a timer that is as long as it takes for them to get to their residence, get set up, and get reloaded back into the game. This draft will hold as it stands, and so we can continue talking about it in that fashion, as well as, ultimately how these players might step up to the moment. I think we have to talk about stakes here. While 100 Thieves has definitely struggled a bit in recent weeks, they at least have a couple games separation over those bubble teams. But Immortals is that bubble team that we're talking about. And so you definitely don't want to be dropping a game, in this situation specifically. And again, for Immortals, every win you can get over the teams above you in the standing does that much more for you in the way of sneaking into the postseason picture.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it for Immortals. They have a very tough weekend ahead of them, and they'll basically have to really earn their way in against playoff opponents if they're able to take these teams down. It's unfortunate for them that EG just won in the game previously because that was their closest competition, and the fact that they were able to find a win over TSM does make it a more difficult road for Immortals. So I'm curious to see if they can pull it off. They'll need to go at best 2-1, and hope some other teams lose a little bit more often. But realistically, the 3-0 will be needed to actually pull that off, and it's a doozy of a 3-0 that Immortals is looking at.
Right, you mentioned the tough schedule. Of course, it starts here with 100 Thieves. You followed up with TSM tomorrow, and then on Sunday, they would have to take down Cloud9. And so that is a stacked lineup if I've ever seen one.
I think at least at first, I'm glad that they get the 100 Thieves right now because I think we can all agree that 100 Thieves have been slumping a little bit, and we've seen even Someday has not been playing as well as he normally does. So if there is a game that they need to get momentum from, I feel like the 100 Thieves game right now is the perfect game to start with.
And I want to say I'm excited to see the Caitlyn Thresh for a couple reasons out of Raze and Destiny, because Raze, also the OST player, going up against FBI, there's a lot of, I think, rivalry between all those AD carries down there, with Lost as well kind of getting in there. And Raze has, one, been incredible recently on the Tristana games and stuff like that. And two, I don't know the last time FBI lost lane. I can't even really think of a time that they just 2v2 lost. And so I really like this kind of call out in a way where we're going to take Kate and Thresh, and we're going to 2v2 beat you, which had been such a PowerPoint for 100 Thieves this entire split, was the fact that they pretty much always had a winning bot lane.
Yeah, and I think there's so many things to keep your eye on, right? You have Sunday, like we said, with the globals, but the thing is, they have, I think, 100 Thieves, when I watch their games, I feel like both their side lanes are winning lane, and they're actually pushing advantages. They're getting solo kills or they're getting double kills, whatever it may be, but the mid jungle is just not impacting them as much as I would want them to. Now you've got two globals, so you have no excuse to not impact the map, and they have TF, Taliyah, Senna, Tam. They have so much resources to get the game going, to get the game pressing. But I actually think IMT's response was good. Weak side top and a Thresh. And I think the Thresh pick on 3 was actually pretty big for Immortals. Now, I think the Lantern is going to be a huge play in this. When Taliyah walls, you can play Lantern. If the Thresh, as long as he plays safe, if Destiny plays far back when he needs to and he plays the Lantern, so Caitlyn can hit the tower, Lanterns him out. I think IMT's bot lanes should be safe. So I think obviously 100 Thieves are going to focus topside a lot, but it's like I said, it's going to be a race between Raze and Someday who can get ahead the most. And Insanity needs to make sure he's actually useful in the game to the point where he can win against Riom on the side lane. He can perhaps even match Someday with Revenge shadowing him or something like this. But yeah, both teams have a lot of setup, a lot of CC, a lot of engage. So yeah, this game is, I'd say it's a pretty even draft overall.
Well, with the Ryze pick too, other than just the side lane, in the pure 1v1, it is a pretty good choice against Twisted Fate because Ryze is one of the best priority mages in the entire game. He can expend the mana from level 1 to 3 by just spamming EQ on the wave, and he can very easily take that cheater recall at level 3, go back, get his other mana item, come straight back to lane, and push the wave again. And post 6, after that, he can keep on shoving in the wave. So if Twisted Fate does look for a top lane play, he will more than likely have to lose an entire wave plus a plate off of it. So as long as Ryze keeps shoving, if Twisted Fate manages to make a play sometimes topside, there is a very probable chance that he will be losing things in the mid lane.
Yeah, most definitely. But I think like you said, he should be losing things in the mid lane, but I think the Ryze running cleanse makes it a little bit easier. Ryoma has the TP to get back to lane, so he can afford to drop some trades and use some mana to try and push out back towards Insanity. But I think a little Easter egg in the draft that I just noticed is the fact that Immortals put 3 jungle bans on the 1-2-3, and 2 of those jungles were AD champions. Now, I wonder if that, as soon as they first picked the Renekton, they knew they were going to go for an AP jungler as soon as the AD jungler was taken out. So it's an AP versus AP jungler matchup. And both mid junglers are AP heavy. So Verdant Barrier, Merc Treads are going to come out early. Who can get the top? Who can get the bot first?
I think the other thing too is we all know that the top side is going to be a big focus on the early game, and if they can snowball and shut down the side, he's just going to have a miserable time. But in the late game, in terms of like 5v5 team fights, if one team's stacking dragons with like the Thresh Kate, if assuming they have priority down there and they're able to take those opportunities when the other team goes topside to stack dragons, I actually think it is a little difficult for 100 Thieves comp unless they find really good flanks for Someday and the TF to kind of combo onto the backline. Because to your point about the Thresh Lantern pulling people out of walls and different stuff like that, they probably outscale. I mean, the Senna is a kind of infinite scaling champion, but other than that, if the Scion doesn't get shut down, he's going to become a better front line. There's not that many tools really to access the backline other than that kind of like flank and TF ult, like I was saying. So if you're fighting front to back again and having to walk into Drake pit situations through Nidalee spears and Caitlyn traps and just Scion as a giant meatball, I actually think it's really hard for 100 Thieves probably, unless they really do get ahead and can actually execute this 1-3-1.
Yeah, you're completely right. And the meta right now is Drakes. You see 1-3-1 comps, and the only way that the 1-3-1 comp struggles actually is when they're forced to fight a dragon. G2 and stuff like this with the Quinn, the Lucian lanes. When they have to go into team fights, they struggle a lot. I remember a game against Rogue where they had a Azir Vayne, Elder Drakes, Mountain Souls, all these things. The team fights always went into the scaling side. So you're completely right. Immortals have a really good team fight in a sense. They have so much zone control over the dragons. So with the Caitlyn Thresh, I expect them to get dragons stacking up early. And now the problem that 100 Thieves has, not only is it difficult for them to fight the dragons themselves because of the 1-3-1 comp they're running, if you look at their ultimates across the board, they don't have much to work with. All they have is a Senna ult and a Renekton ult. The Taliyah wall, yes, it can impact the fight. They have a TF ult and a Tamkin ult. So in terms of raw power, they don't actually have that much firepower against things like the Thresh, the Caitlyn, the Scion, all disengaged. So 100 Thieves need to make sure they pick their fights correctly, perhaps try to force a pick, force someone to back off, just TF ult on someone, chunk them out, make them have to base, and use that tempo advantage through side lanes or through picks to get to the dragons first, like we saw EG do so well last game.
But even if they don't get the dragons first, 100 Thieves always have the option of their very strong top side to be taking both of the heralds in this game. And especially that early game herald, they want to blow out the mid lane as fast as possible. I think it should be relatively easy for them to take out top turret without even the use of the herald because of the pressure that they should be exerting there. So if they can manage to get the mid lane turret down too, that frees up a lot of chances for the Twisted Fate to move around the map wherever he wants. So you could, if I was 100 Thieves, you can give the first and even the second dragon if you have a plan to fight the third and fourth because of the potential snowball you have from taking plates with the heralds in mid and top.
Jumping in real quick, as you saw just moments ago on the bottom of your screen, Immortals Revenge has made it back online, the first of the players to do so. So we'll continue updating as each of them are able to file back into the game and online status. That said, I do actually want to return real quickly to the depiction that you kind of drew for us, Cajal, around the team that 100 Thieves has been with Ryoma in. Maybe a lackluster mid-jungle duo while the side lanes try and get some work done. But if anything, what I find comforting or optimistic about this draft is the fact that it seems to be a recognition by the team that they need to make a change. And so the question, I think, becomes, is it too little too late? And is this the right player to pull off this kind of a switch?
I feel like 100 Thieves, when I watch their games, they're trying to copy teams too much. When I looked at this team in the lock-in tournament, for example, they were playing things like Galio TF, diving sides, being proactive, getting their side lanes ahead. But now they're just playing like scaling with Ryoma coming in. They're playing scaling mid-jungle, not too much playmaking, more towards things like the Orion and such, where I think that this playstyle is good and dandy. I mean, it's working across the whole world, just playing like scaling, not pushing advantages too much in the early game. But that's not what their strength is, I think. I think their strength is players like the Monte being on Rise, being on Galio, being on TF, although Galio might not be so much meta, maybe even try things like the Lucian mid or the Tristana mid, things that can actually push in the lane and move to sides. So I think that this kind of play style is what 100 Thieves suits the best and suits them the best. I think it's not something they should shy away from, but they don't have to try and copy other teams. They don't have to try and reenact other drafts that they're losing to. Just try to keep what you're good at. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They did well in the lock-in tournament. Just make sure you keep the globals up. Make sure you keep the playmaking up in your mid-jungle. And I think that's why they kind of dropped the ball a bit. And now they've kind of lost their playstyle. They've gone back to it now with Ryoma instead. So that's quite surprising. So yeah, if I was on this team, from my point of view, I would have said, guys, let's not waste our time faffing around with these drafts. Let's not waste our time scaling. Look, we're here to fight. We're here to dive, and we're here to make plays happen. And if we lose the game later on, that just sucks. We didn't snowball it properly. Let's work on how we snowball it properly, because we're actually snowballing early games. So yeah, 100 Thieves, for me, dropped the ball a little bit into finding their flavor, finding what they're good at, what they're shining with. But now they've gone back to it, and they've gone back to it hard, man. 4 globals and a split pushing Renekton. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely totally reverted, because there's a portion of me that could almost see the kind of other side of the argument, though I'm not personally on it myself. But, you know, the idea that, okay, FBI is a beast. He's a total stud, right? And he can play team fight super well. Same's pretty true with Someday. And so while they do get large lane leads kind of on their own and their own individual skill, they're also still really good in team fights. Like, Someday is not just a lane dominant player. He can play weak side. He can play front line. He does all that really well. And so I could almost see an argument being made where, like, okay, if our playmaking's struggling, we can just be a team fight team. Like, we have, you know, a great frontline player and a great backline player, and who he's been pretty good. And so I can see kind of that argument to say, okay, let's pick some more scaling. Let's not all in on early game plays, because they had been failing those after lock-in through the first couple of weeks. Their dives had really started going south. And so I get the idea. I don't personally like it. To Cajal's point, like, this is your strength, is when those dives are going well. So lean into that and fix that instead of shying away from it. But, you know, when you have someone like FBI who's such a monster, I can see the world where it's like, okay, let's just put him on some scaling champs and let him carry us.
We have to remember that these group of players, even when they aren't Golden Guardians, really made it, and especially Demonte, made a name for himself playing Kiana from the very beginning. So they were really all about these pushing laners that go straight into the side lanes, even on a completely different team. And now that they're 100 Thieves with Someday, everyone could say that it was just a straight up upgraded roster from Golden Guardians. So a lot of people would say it's kind of a head scratcher to put in Ryoma, because Demonte, from the beginning all the way to now, has been that push lane, go to the side lane kind of player. That being said, though, when you do have Demonte in your team and you don't see much variety in the team comps, it does start to make drafting a little bit easier. And for the enemy team's coaches, they can even predict the drafts from just almost 100% accuracy, because they know for sure Demonte is going to pick TF or Galio, and then he's going to go to side lane. And so you can either let him do that and try and counter the plays you know are coming, or you can just ban them away and put them on something less comfortable, which people started doing, and Demonte started falling behind in lane phase. So when you have someone like Ryoma who can play a different style and they're playing different team comps, it might add a little bit of variety. And we even see now that he's picking the Twisted Fate, so I'm sure that caught a lot of teams off guard, and maybe they could have an advantage in draft because of something the other team would not expect.
Yeah, I think when I look at the 100 Thieves with Demonte, I compare them a little bit to FPX, right? With Doinby on things like the Rumble, the TF, all these things, Nocturne even. And when I look at Demonte's history just in general, I mean, even this split, 100% win rate on TF, 100% win rate on set mid, which, yes, it's on a meta pick, but it does the job, right? It pushes in the waves and goes to side. Even things like last year with Rumble, Echo, Sylas, these champs, they can go side lane, they can do well in lane. We even saw Jizuke last game on the Echo. So I feel like there's actually a wide variety of champions that Demonte plays to fit this style. Now, I don't want to take away from the fact that 100 Thieves maybe is having success with Ryoma and Scrims, doing well in Academy, bringing him up and then trying that kind of play style. So I won't doubt them there. But I just think that they should have just adapted more to what their team's good at rather than looking at other teams and saying, can we copy paste that? Can we do what they're doing? Because if you can't do it better than them, then you're never going to succeed. But if you can do your own style, like we saw with FPX, when it came to a meta where there was lots of scaling and team fights, and they just throw a curveball in with their like Malphite mid and their Rumbles and all these things, just forcing fights, catching teams off guard, it actually works for them. So I would like to see 100 Thieves go to that kind of style.
In a moment, I may want to expand to a more macro-focused discussion around the game of League of Legends on that point. But I do also want to redirect back here to Immortals for a brief moment. This is a team that I think in some ways has gone unrecognized for the record and the progress that they've made this split, given the overall experience and or expectation of the roster coming in. You've got a couple very young players who are looking to be developed, a couple talents coming over from OS, and of course Xerxes probably being the most veteran of them all in a major region in the jungle. And so, Mark, I think that is something that maybe has been forgotten within some of the narratives just because they are outside the playoff picture. You know, it wasn't quite special enough to be called out so much, but here they are 7-8. That's not nothing to, bat your eyes at.
No, I think when there were a number of the kind of developmental rosters that were being established early on, Dignitas stole the spotlight right away with how good they've been. And, FlyQuest, Golden Guardians, and to a lesser extent, Immortals have kind of been less talked about for that reason, but they've been slowly leveling up. I think Reyes has been finding his footing a lot more with his recent Tristana games and stuff like that. His Vayne game have been pretty impressive to see out of this roster. And I think that they have a bit of a less proactive play style. Like we talked about 100 Thieves having such a defined playstyle at the start of the split and veering away from it. It gave you a lot to talk about there. I don't think Immortals has had quite as much of a consistent, strong, obvious playstyle throughout the split. I think they've tried to find their footing as a developmental roster, and so it's been a little less like, oh, that's the 1-3-1 team that you might say with EG, or that's the the early dive team like some of these other teams. And so I think they have been finding that a little bit more. I think seeing their players pick up more champions in the mid lane, more champions in the bot lane are a great step for them, and the fact that they are still really young.
Well,
yeah,
and
sorry.
You put yours at the
first.
same time as mine.
Yeah, Cato first.
Okay. Yeah, so I was doing my research on all the NA teams, and when I was watching Immortals, the conclusions that I took away was I think that Xerxes spends a lot of time towards the top side, and this team just likes to draft full scaling on solo laners, farming jungler, and at 15, they're down 1k gold. They're not a proactive team. They're not going to try and do things. They're just going to scale, wait for you to make a mistake, and then look for team fights. But this draft's actually kind of different. Yes, they have a weak side top, but they have a really, really strong mid jungle. In the early game, they have a pushing bot. So a bit more of a proactive draft, I would say, from Immortals. But just from the games I watched, there was only one proactive draft other than this one that I saw, where it was like a Seraphine bot, Tristana mid, and they had a lot of agency in the early game, because if you have an 80 carry mid, you obviously have the push, so you can do things around the map. And they're actually doing pretty well. And the Seraphine ban always coming out against this team kind of nullifies that one agency early game playstyle that they have, from what I've seen. I think that one ban basically takes away their whole early game, and they just go back to AP mids and they go back to scaling. But this draft actually is quite impressive. They're matching the globals that 100 Thieves have to actually start to be proactive themselves, whereas most of the other games I feel like they just play to hold on.
And I want to go back to Immortals a little bit, because we were talking about their players and how they're kind of an unrecognized team. And I can speak on the coaching staff of Immortals, or at least the ones that remained there. I know in specific Malaclips was very interested in Revenge, which was kind of questionable for a lot of people on social media, and just the reactions in general were like, why would you pick up Revenge? Because he didn't have a great academy split on FlyQuest. So what was the idea behind that? The idea behind that is, in fact, Revenge is a very good mechanical player, and I think everyone can see that just from the solo queue ladder. He's been ranked 1 multiple times, very high LP challenger, Riven main. And so when they pick up these fresh players, their idea is that maybe not in the first split. They don't have to have an amazing first split as long as it can scale into the later splits, because Revenge, super mechanically gifted, already has the tools he needs to be able to outplay people on the highest level, as we've seen on some of his Aurelia games. So right now, we see Revenge even counterpicking Renekton with Sion, which a lot of people would think, why would you do that when he'd rather go for something like Gnar or Jace or something a little more suited to the playstyle we've seen before. But the coaching staff over at Immortals believe in that you need to have a much bigger variety if you want to end up being an international level team. So right now we can expect maybe a lot of different kind of comps come from Immortals and not so much consistency. But as the split goes on and heading into next split, we'll see a whole different Immortals in that they've leveled up a lot.
I love the point, and I think it touches on something, which is that, particularly when you're a player who's expected to come in as a carry play style, I think it sets you up for maybe a more critical eye when it comes to your performance, just because it's. Audience is saying, hey, I was told he's going to carry us to victory, so he should be putting up the big numbers and making the plays. But there also has to be allowed some time for the player to kind of, bake within the league and ultimately, find their way, and evolve as a player into the position where they're comfortable in all of those different scenarios you would find on the LCS stage.
Yeah, and so I want to say on that point, it's very similar situation with Fudge. Everybody saw Fudge come into the split. They're like, man, this guy is the best top laner in Academy. I can't wait to see what he does coming on C9. It just carries C9 to victory. But for almost the entire split, we've seen Fudge on things like Gragas and Karma and things more on the weak side. He's had good strong side games, but we're mainly seeing weak side. And there's a lot of complaints about that. It's like, wow, this guy was the best in Academy. Like, he's not even that good. But you have to give him time to just learn these new kind of play styles, because I can attest to that. In Academy, Fudge was almost always the strong side top laner, and he was just smashing everybody in Academy. He was doing a really good job. But when you come into LCS, you have to have that variety if you want to end up being a world's level top laner. And I think that goes to say with a lot of the league right now, because there are so many different teams that have kind of experimental rosters. One could say that the overall level of play in the LCS has gone down this split, but if we go into the next split, keeping up this development, there's a pretty good chance that the overall level of LCS will evolve in a year or so.
Alrighty, well, I did just receive word. Immortals are now safely in a new location. However, they have experienced issues reconnecting to the game. League Operations is attempting a chrono break as a fix for the issue. So we're going to take a quick breather while the chrono break is working, and we'll have an update for you right after this commercial break. We thank you so much for your patience. We'll see you here in just a bit.
Welcome back. Haven't seen y'all in a while, but we're ready almost to go here just again. Some last-minute issues are being resolved behind the scenes, but we'll be right back in the game here soon. In case you have forgotten, I'm Captain Flowers, that's Azael, and we will be bringing you this third game here as soon as it fires up yet again with a brand new draft.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. Obviously, we know it's a long pause. But sometimes things happen, they had to evacuate, they had to change where they're at. So some issues coming along with all of that. Hopefully we will be into the champ select. We'll get the game going incredibly quickly from here. And then hopefully we'll have no more issues for the rest of the day. But it will be interesting because there's a lot to think about. If you're doing a full redo of the draft, it's pretty interesting to kind of think about some of the implications there.
Yeah, things will definitely change up a little bit. Big shout out, too, to everybody on the analyst desk. It is incredibly difficult to be able to fill time and find meaningful things to discuss during these sorts of pauses. I was talking with people during the pause myself about how I am so thankful that we have the desk in times like these. Otherwise, I would just have to ask Isaac what he's going to eat for dinner, because I would not have found something meaningful to talk about for all that time. We would have been talking about wherever. What are you going to eat for dinner tonight, Isaac? Let's talk about that since we got a minute.
I don't think we need to go there. We've been vamping for like 30 seconds here. Flowers, come on. Give us a bit more.
I'm curious about
credit.
what you're going to eat for dinner, because you always post tasty food pics on the internet, Isaac. You've brought this storm to your own door.
Okay. Well, I was going to make some Indian food tonight. I was going to make some salam biryani, which is my favorite Indian dish. So that's what I was going to make later tonight.
I have betrayed my own interests by now learning what your food is going to be, and now I'm hungrier. So I bamboozled myself a little bit on this one, but hopefully we'll be able to see 100 Thieves not bamboozle their draft here. Let's throw back to some of that stuff the analyst desk was talking about 100 Thieves being on blue side, and Cadril mentioning that Immortals didn't really have to show a lot other than some basic reactions in the red side draft, and how that could come back to bite 100 Thieves now that both sides know what the other one's planning for a while.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? Because we haven't had a lot of situations where it has to be a fully new draft, so we don't know if they're going to go towards the same thing. That's my understanding. Fully new draft, so you could theoretically even just like ban out the TF or change up your pick ban completely, right? If you think that the draft could have gone a different way, you've had a lot more time to actually think about it. So it could be a full rerun of what we actually saw. It could be everything changing up. I've got really no idea what they're going to show us. I was pretty excited to see the 100 Thieves draft because it was pretty atypical for what they had been playing with Ryoma. A lot of globals, a lot of side lane pressure, looking to really focus on snowballing the game through someday. I think that's exciting. Katra was talking about it a while ago now, but these kind of clear points on the map that teams could look to attack. And I think those create really interesting games when two different teams have clear win conditions and they're on opposite sides of the map. It's like, how is your weak side going to hold up? How well are you going to snowball the advantage on your strong side? Then once you get those leads, how will those players perform in team fights and throughout the rest of the game, right? Because you're putting so much emphasis on creating this monster, and then if they have a bad team fight, well, the other players in your team are pretty weak because they didn't get any help, so it can go pretty bad. And I think those games really can be fun to watch, so I'm hoping that we're going to get a similar draft from these two teams and kind of get to see it resolved.
I just love the draft focusing on someday. I love seeing people play around this absolute Chad in the top lane. I love seeing it just be Renekton and his whole bunch of buddies backing him up with 1, 2, 3, 4 different globals. It's Secret Service protecting Renekton. Yes, Mr. Lizard, I will be right there. Would you like a shield from across the map? Sure thing. You want my buddy to catfish? You can have him. You want Twisted Fate to come up there and play some Yu-Gi-Oh with you in the top lane, just buying a little bit of time? Sure, why not have him hop up there too? You need a wall? Let's build you one. Talia's on the way. Just so many tools to enable the man to do what he does best and carry some League of Legends.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see if that does come up. But at the same time, we obviously don't know if it's going to be a similar draft at all. It could be a completely different look. We could get into the game and it's someday playing weak side. So it's back to the drawing board a little bit, and the two organizations may have similar thought processes on if this is going to be affected by the previous game, or if not. They did get a couple minutes into game, is my understanding, because we're at a broadcast delay at the start of the game for competitive integrity. So we just saw the draft happen, but my guess is that they were a couple minutes into game when that remake would have come through, which would be what is prompting this full redraft here.
Which would make sense.
And, it's such an important game for these two teams. We talked about the strength of schedule. Of course, you guys may have forgotten what that is, but Immortals have a very, very tough weekend. They have 100 Thieves here, and then I believe they have TSM and C9, and that is a really tough series of opponents. They're on the outside looking in for playoffs right now. They are a couple games back. EG did win, which was the team that they were actually closest against. So it really does make this an incredibly important game for them. And 100 Thieves are trying to maintain their playoff spot and push to make sure that they're going to be in the upper bracket. You talked about how much that mattered for TSM last year. Being able to have that second chance in the lower bracket is incredibly important. And these are things that really can shape your playoff experience and potentially be the difference between getting to MSI or not.
And we're talking about drafts being remade. We're talking about different approaches to the game. We're talking about all of this. Let's talk mental boom, because one of the biggest things that can take you out of the game is having something be interrupted, having the flow stop when you're just already in the middle of the game. Because we've seen this happen before, right? Even us as commentators, it's jarring to have this thing that you're originally going to be doing, your brains in talk about the game mode, and now we're like, hey, there's no game anymore. So I sit here and say, what do I talk about? And I start asking Isaac what he's going to eat for dinner. If my brain's doing that, imagine what players are going to do. Granted, they probably should be smarter than me, but still, their brains have got to adapt to the fact that this is a delayed game, that they've got to have that mental reset. They got to be prepared to go, forget everything that happened in the previous draft. Doesn't matter how much you liked the draft. Doesn't matter how much you liked Renekton's wild world and his 4 friends along for the ride. Doesn't matter. It ain't there no more. Might as well have never happened. Just got to forget it and move forward. And I think that both of these teams are going to need to turn that into a clean slate, man. Just reset all of it, throw it all in the garbage, get ready to go for something new.
And that's where I think in these types of situations, having someone on your team who is a positive force, who can be joking around, who can be kind of keeping things relatively light, can actually make a really big difference on a team's mental across a really long delay like this. Because delays can be some of the most frustrating things for players for sure. If you become unfocused or if you're getting kind of mentally fatigued during it, maybe you're not going into the game in your best situation. Of course, it has been quite a long delay. Hopefully the staff and the coaching staff are around it and having the players take a little bit of a break, having the players, refocus and be able to be at their best going into this game. Because it is so important. So much of the game is a mental game. So much of it is down to the concentration that you have in these moments. And, that can be make or break.
Well, I will update y'all here. Let me check my update thing. Looks like we're just still rolling along, getting those things fixed behind the scenes. So hopefully we will find ourselves here in Champion Select very soon to get back into 100 Thieves going up against Immortals here in this game. Remember, 100 Thieves still, where is my standings? I will pull them up right now just to make sure I don't accidentally misspeak. This is one of the nice parts about work from home. I just got everything right here at the computer. So 100 Thieves at 9 and 6 coming into this one. Immortals at 7 and 8. There's been such a cluster there in the middle where at one time, what was it, last week, the week before, we had, 5 teams tied for second or something? And then the one team that was out ahead, which is Cloud9, all of a sudden have lost 3 games in a row. So they're not out ahead anymore. They're back in the cluster. The cluster is feeling pretty scary around there in the middle because let's look. Dignitas at second has 10 wins.
I mean,
Immortals
it's 2 wins between first and sixth, right?
Yeah. First and sixth is 10 and 9. On the way in the wins column.
It's crazy, right? Like it's such a big difference here. Well, 11, Cloud9 is sitting at 11 wins. So, they are 2 up right there. But, a lot of these teams still have games to play today. Obviously we still have 3 of the 5 games left to play today. And, that gap can get even closer here. Cloud9, has been on a pretty big slide. Over these last 3 games, they are 0-3. So many teams now are realizing that first even is up for grabs, that these upper bracket berths are going to be easier than they perhaps imagined before. TSM as well dropping a game today. There have been a lot of upsets already. Champ Select, hallelujah. We are here on our way, and we're gonna have to find out how different, if at all, this draft will actually be. That is going to be, I think, really a point of discussion. And already, Renekton banned out by Immortals. So that is a change here. That is what Someday was actually playing in the top lane. It's going to be interesting to see if 100 Thieves want to change any of their bans to target some of the things that would have been picked by Immortals. And also, with Renekton banned out, does that now mean that 100 Thieves go a completely different direction, right? Are they still willing to play this style that feels so focused on the top lane if they don't actually have that Renekton available? Udyr is up, and so is the Hecarim. So Mortals potentially could leave both up and go for a trade, or they can ban one out, at which point I'm expecting the other would get taken. So I actually prefer this. They will ban the Thresh, which was a self-ban. That's actually what Destiny was playing last time around. But this does mean Hecarim potentially can go over. Udyr was nerfed on 11.5, but it's not like a massive nerf, so I don't really think it's that concerning, and I do expect with that available that Xerxes would go towards it. Of course, there is still the Nidalee. He could run that back as the pick he went for last time, but it feels like Udyr's probably the likely play here.
Okay, so Seraphine, Tristana, Lilia, Thresh, Olaf, Renekton, all off of the table. Not seeing none of those. Udyr locked in as expected with the answer in the jungle here. So we already know what both the junglers are looking like. And let's see how else Immortals wants to go about this draft.
Yeah, already a very different look, right? We have 2 of 2 picks that are going to be different. It was double AP junglers last time, the Lily and the Nidalee. Very different look. Karma coming in early, which did get some slight buffs. I want to say it's like a second off the cooldown of Q at all ranks or something like that. Kai'Sa available though, and looking like 100 Thieves now going to be going for a more engage focused, more team fight style. This is a very different look than what they were going for last time, where it was going to be more about the 1-3-1, more about getting out to those side lanes. Hecarim Rel is all about the engage. FBI on this team fighter to be able to follow that up. And with Alistar getting locked in here, we now know that it is not a support Karma.
Right.
Very likely it's going to be up towards that top lane for Revenge. There is a possibility of playing it in different roles. I have seen very rarely in solo queue, mid lane Karma, even farming Karma. But my guess is with Alistar locked in, it probably means it's top lane for Revenge, and they'll throw a couple bans the way of Someday. Feels like pretty much anytime Hecarim comes through, Shen is going to get banned out for the top lane if that's not already picked. So is going to be the choice. And interesting to see 100 Thieves still banning out top laners. So not convinced that the Karma is actually going to go up there.
Okay, Shen's banned away, Camille's banned away. What else do we have coming out from Immortals here? Remember that we still have to see an AD carry from them as well, but that pool is not being focused at all. Considering Kai'Sa has already been drafted, Tristana has already been banned, those kind of feel like the S tiers right now, so 100 Thieves are not really concerned about banning any others away for the time being. Instead, they will continue to focus on those top lane possibilities with Irelia banned out along with the Gnar from Immortals.
So it feels like they're assuming that this is mid lane Karma then, is the read that I'm getting, because you're double banning top lane with Karma and Alistar showing, right? So I'm assuming they're thinking that it is going to be going towards Insanity. Draven would be a pretty strong answer in lane towards the Kai'Sa if you want to get really, really aggressive here. But it's going to be Vayne. So we have seen Vayne come out a couple times now this split. It has usually been into very heavily frontline teams with an Alistar, try to actually deny that engage. You can do kind of a similar thing against Rel, where you're trying to actually condemn the dismount, the engage they're coming through from the Rel. But when Rel has R available, it becomes so hard to actually react to the flash RW. Like you can get snapped in pretty much immediately, especially with Hecarim Fear on top, with the potential of the Shockwave. I don't really like this this Vayne pick into this sort of draft. It's not one of those juicy games where we saw like Mundo Jungle and all of these kind of just like slower moving, big beefy frontliners that you have time to attack. It feels like while Vayne can knock down this team pretty quickly, at the same time, you're always within that range of threat, right? You're always within the range of Shockwave or potential Rel combo or potential Fear from the Hecarim, which can make it so difficult to play out. And it is going to be Gragas top for Someday. They're not sure what is going to be going top lane, and they just want to have something pretty safe.
Okay, Gragas makes sense. Remember, we are on patch 11.5 here, which I believe was one of the ones that included some Gragas nerfs. Yes,
it did.
This
the
was
Q
where
mana
Gragas,
cost, it went way up.
Mana cost 80 at all ranks on the Q. So that just means that Gragas will be more taxed in terms of his sustain there in the lane, constantly being able to shove things out and make it so that he can always have just that solidarity there in that top side. But let's see how Immortals draft finishes up here. It's Lucian in the mid lane, it's Karma top, and that is how Immortals are playing this one. So Azael, compared to the previous draft we saw between these two teams, how are we feeling about this matchup?
I mean, this is wildly different. This is all about 5v5 on both sides, right? There's no one that really wants to split push whatsoever. Of course, you can play side lanes a little bit, like, maybe as a Vayne or something. But generally speaking, this is just straight up 5v5. It's going to be largely down to, I think, the initial engage from the 100 Thieves side. They have exceptionally powerful initial engage when you're looking at Gragas, Rel, Hecarim, all of these champions. If you hit the initial combo, you can burst down potentially these double marksmen. But if they are able to use, the Udyr and the Alistar to disengage or counter engage on that and keep their double marksmen alive, you have the Karma who's likely going to be building, Moonstone, Ardent Sensor, a supportive style build, who's going to be shielding up and enabling this Lucian and Vayne to try to run over the fight. And I think most of these fights you're going to see decided one way or the other almost right off the bat.
Yeah, Lucian and Vayne just being the firepower for this team. I don't expect Karma to be some sort of an AP build, the full support approach like you're talking about with Moonstone and Ardent, just to guarantee maximum healing, maximum shielding, maximum survivability for these two to survive that wombo. Because on the enemy squad, it's 4 divers and an Orianna that can strap the ball to one of those divers for the ulti. So that combo potential with those 5 champions is a death sentence for either Lucian or Vayne if they get caught out. Remember that both these marksmen, while having a lot of damage potential, especially as things move on, have very limited range.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it is going to be difficult to play that out. One of the other things that I think makes it more complicated is the fact that because we're expecting Karma to go full support, you don't have a true AP threat, right? So it's going to be armor stacking on Hecarim, armor stacking on Gragas, armor stacking on Rel. Could even go towards, I think an early Seekers makes a lot of sense for Ryoma. So you get
tons.
A lot of efficiency out of the itemization here. Of course, yes, Vayne does deal a lot of true damage, but I think it is a difficult game to play for Vayne, given that there is so much engage, there is so much lockdown. If you do get caught whatsoever, you can pretty much just be instantly dead. But if 100 Thieves can kite it out, if they can absorb that engage, avoid the engage, then I do think there is the opportunity for them to, win fights while kiting back or potentially even chasing down afterwards. But it seems like a tough comp to play. I would much rather be on the 100 Thieves side of this one.
Yeah, if the Vayne is able to stay alive and survive that initial engage, Hecarim, Gragas, Rel, all these champions, very, very tanky, but you can only be so tanky against percent HP true damage, especially as she builds up items going forward in the game. You eventually get to the point where if Vayne has 4 items, 6 autos, and you're either dead or you're forced out of the fight, and you might as well be dead. So
pretty much.
Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you build. You can have 6 Thornmails, 6 autos, nope, go home.
Yeah,
So,
I generally feel like, honestly, at 2 items, Vayne is just pretty much a monster. You don't really need much more than that. Of course, it can get more extreme, but, when you're on your Mythic plus a Rage Blade, that alone generally makes it feel like you can just shred through tanks incredibly fast. It's just, can you stay safe? From Body Slam Flash, from the Hecarim Ultimate fearing you in, from Flash RW. Like, there's just so many things that can catch you. But you have to move yourself forward into range of those to really be doing anything, to be getting damage out in these fights. They don't really have a tremendous amount of poke or damage that can go out safely, right? It's, Lucian and Vayne autoing for the most part. You're going to have Karma who can throw out some Qs, but given that we're expecting support, it shouldn't be really that threatening. So it will be interesting to see if they can do it. I do think it's a pretty high barrier of execution. They do have the Udyr, though, which is really, really strong and for the most part, hasn't really been getting through drafts in a long time because on 11-4 it was pretty much permabanned. But this is one of those drafts where, Mortals on red side didn't want to double ban, didn't want to triple ban jungle. They actually changed from the previous draft that we had to remake, banned out the Renekton, and decided to just leave up 2 of the jungle OPs and make a trade. And you kind of put in this interesting situation as a result.
Yeah, and looking at the Udyr nerfs on 11.5, just so we can point out the differences between permaban Udyr and this Udyr who has made it through the draft, the total damage on Phoenix Stance is down over the course of the entirety of the aura when he transforms into that. So instead of 275 damage over 4 seconds at max rank, it'll only be 240, so a bit of a hit there. And then his health per level was reduced by 7. So 7 times 18 is 126. So he'll lose about a ruby crystal's worth of health over the course of the entire game. So not incredible nerfs. He should still be pretty powerful, but just not quite what he was.
Yeah, his win rate didn't go down a tremendous amount. It did get hit fairly significantly, but because he was already a really high win rate champion, because he was already exceptionally powerful, you can still get done a lot of what you could get done before. Of course, there are situations where the nerfs are going to make a difference, but overall, as far as competitive play, it's a really fast farmer. It's an extremely tanky champion. He can solo objectives up very, very easily. His clear is really healthy as well, which is also important in LCS. And generally speaking, you just don't see any champions that have a really dangerous clear or really slow clear because getting through the jungle so fast is just so important. But we made it! We're in the
here!
game.
We did it! We're back on Summoner's Rift and we're ready to go for our 3rd game of the day. It's 100 Thieves in the blue corner versus Immortals in the red. Let's do it!
Okay, so it's Ghost as well as Phase Rush for both of the junglers here. So this should be interesting. We know that Hecarim is going to be going for the chem tank. You can assume the same here for Xerxes. Given that he actually does have Ghost and Phase Rush of his own and the ability to just spam out Bear Stance, you definitely do not want to run into this guy as Hecarim early on. I don't think there's any way Hecarim will be winning any of those fights whatsoever. Which could make that thing a little bit more difficult for him. But going to be interested to see how Insanity does. He got counterpick mid, went towards the Lucian. We've seen Pobelter have quite a lot of success on it in 2 out of his 3 games. So perhaps trying to replicate a little bit of that here.
Okay, Destiny doing what all Alistar players do and just banging on the cowbell here before everything spawns. Looks like junglers will start at opposite sides of the map for their blue buffs, just making sure they can continue spamming those abilities as they move throughout the jungle. We know that both Hecarim and Udyr are exceptional as long as they can just keep that spam going there. back here in the mid lane. Ryoma versus Insanity. Remember, Ryoma's the one that so much conversation is around, right? Like, this is the replacement that a lot of fans were like, wait, why is Ryoma coming in instead of Damonte? They're clearly wanting to play more of Ryoma's style as opposed to Damonte's style, where Damonte really wants to roam to side lanes a lot. Whenever we've seen his biggest, baddest moments, that's always what he's doing, whereas Ryoma seems to be more of the safe control mage type of player.
That has been the MO thus far, but he did have a really successful style this game and was going to be going towards TF before he had a remake, so has some other tricks up his sleeve. But at the same time, we'll see how he's going to match up here against Insanity. Insanity, in his time in the LCS, I think has looked fairly promising. Hasn't always come together for him, though. He's been in these situations where he's had a lot of almost and not quites. When you think back, especially to the last split, where there was a lot of games where it felt like he was so close to carrying, but couldn't quite execute in those final moments. But it's been good to see that he hasn't actually lost that aggression, that he still kind of has his killer instinct, because I do think that's so important for any developing player. You've got to be able to have the confidence to look for these plays. Just because they don't pan out early on doesn't mean that you're not going for the right play. You've got to have the confidence that you can actually execute on that. And at the same time, we see, again, more trading here between Insanity. He's trying to actually reset the wave and go back early here. He's already spent all his corrupting potions, is going to get the nice kill on the ward, but Ryoma on the other side wants to hold the wave to try to force Insanity to either stay around or potentially get a bit of a bad recall here with the wave pushing away from him. So they're going to be fighting heavily for this. Insanity is basically trying to tax Ryoma's mana, where Ryoma is attacking the health of Insanity, trying to leave the wave in a bad spot, but it's thinned out enough at this point that it will push back to the Immortals side, so you can go for that early recall. Up here in the top lane, Revenge against Someday. Someday just trying to withstand the onslaught in the early levels. It's really when you're having the most difficult time, to be honest, against someone like this Karma, when you are playing that top lane Karma, especially when they're going for that supportive style. When you get some items under your belt, you really become too tanky for the Karma to really be able to attack very much. But the early levels can be difficult if you take too many autos, if you take too many Qs to the face. Karma can get an advantage, sometimes cash out on plates, but Someday doing pretty well so far. And with the expected mana nerfs, you're thinking that he will probably build towards a tier and just try to compensate for that with that little build path change, perhaps. And I think beyond that, it's not going to make too much of a difference because those changes are really early game focused. But Huhi, Insanity uses dash. Huhi's going to be going in.
And Insanity gets away from it, using the flash to stay alive. The man survives the gank, but a nice rotation from the 100 Thieves support early on gets the summoner spell from Immortals mid laner.
Perfect. Nicely done. Going to be able to get the flash out there. Glad to have you back. And back here in the bot lane.
I believe.
Looks like they're setting up a bit of freeze.
Okay, Someday going in for the trade onto Revenge up here in the top side. Revenge with that Summon Airy, likely to be that Moonstone Renewer build that we were talking about earlier. Someday here on the Gragas, slightly behind in terms of farm, but look at all the extra minions he has to pick up, so that should make this lane break just about even as that collides with the turret. Jungle checkup now. As you can see, the Ionian Boots of Lucidity, such a popular choice for so many junglers to rush these days. Going after that on your first back, getting the extra movement speed, as well as the incredibly powerful ability haste early on. And Closer will go after this first Drake of the game with help from Huhi here once more.
Yeah, nicely done. Going to be able to grab this dragon, no problem. They have the push in mid lane. They have the push in bot. So they're going to be able to use this despite the fact that Udyr would have prio in that 1v1. It's about the lanes and the setup that 100 Thieves had, so going to be grabbing the dragon here for themselves. Someday getting low on mana, so should be forced back to base here pretty soon, but wants to be able to clear out the wave first, and likely will TP back on this next wave.
Down here in bottom lane, 100 Thieves maintaining control over the push. Gold's still very close between the two squads. It's not like anybody's building up any huge laning advantages thus far, but Xerxes here in the bottom side. Destiny with a flash engage and FBI with a flash disengage. Now you've got Huhi trying to escape here. Xerxes continues the chase, but with a TP showing up, it's 100 Thieves who wants to turn it right back around. Destiny's got to be careful here as he tries to walk it back out. Revenge gets the tether down and forces the flash away from Someday. Revenge having a level 6 compared to just the level 5 of Someday means he's the more powerful top laner rotating into this one. Immortals brought everybody down, but nobody's dead on either side.
Yeah, no one's dies on either side. We're going to have to see how the wave actually shakes out on the top side. It looks like it will crash, so it should be really good for Revenge. Someday went back to base. He was the one getting pushed in, so he TP's bot lane, which I think was a pretty good play. But because of the way that the wave was actually set up, he had to TP away from a bad wave, and it actually crashed and it will push out away to his opponent. So he lost a lot of the minions at the tower there, and as a result is now down 10 CS, so just about those 2 waves. And will be potentially available to push up here, and we'll see if they want to try to pressure him as he does, because as his next wave groups up, it's going to push towards Revenge, and Someday could be somewhat vulnerable not having his flash or TP now.
Yeah, Someday, no summoner spells here on the Gragas. Does have level 6, does have the ulti. Very powerful tool if they try to dive him and they don't have the coordination just perfect between the two of them. Closer handing off second blue of the game over to Ryoma to guarantee that his mid laner has as much power in this 1v1 in the mid lane as possible. First Drake secured a couple of minutes ago means we could have a very early potential soul this game, Azael, if 100 Thieves can maintain control over that bottom side river moving forward.
Yeah, and that has been something that Closer really has liked to do. He hasn't been as focused on ganking this split. It's been more about heavily farming, objective control, trying to push the pace of the game by doing that. And so far, it's worked pretty well for 100 Thieves overall. When you are playing the Hecarim, you're going to be feeling pretty good about being able to get that quick level 6, about being ready for a team fight. So we'll see if they can continue to snowball that, or if Immortals is going to look to try to contest. Because generally speaking, I think that Immortals is going to be pretty happy to fight on one item.
Down here in the bottom lane, it's Closer coming down to make the play. Destiny knows he is dead. He used the flash earlier, and it's first blood for the 100 Thieves jungle.
Nicely done. Going to be able to get that kill, 400 Thieves. I would have liked to see them give it to FBI, though. There's no flash on Destiny. You know that's a guaranteed kill. Give it to your Kai'Sa. You're going tank Hecarim. Don't really think that it's needed, but going to be able to try to push Raze back here. Did he miss that ward? It looks like it's right on the edge. I'm not sure if it actually gives vision into the brush. I think he might have missed it, but now
like
Closer still has his ultimate,
off.
so could try to push on Insanity.
We'll see if they want to make the dive. Insanity gets away from Ryoma, but the horse has arrived, and another kill over to Closer.
Nicely done. Back-to-back kills, get him in the bot lane, get him in the mid lane. The shockwave hit for Ryoma, so that was an easy cleanup on Insanity. Remember, the roam from Huhi is kind of what sets that up, because they forced the flash early on in the game. The flash was still not back here. So cross-map plays, they're really looking good, getting down to the bot lane, finding the first blood here. Raze had a pretty good condemn on the E, just pushing him back, trying to keep Destiny safe, but there's really no way out for their Alistar, knowing he doesn't have the flash, and then straight up towards mid lane, able to make the dive happen. Ryoma landing the shockwave, no flash available for Insanity. He just used the E, so there's no outplaying that whatsoever.
100 Thieves with 2 kills to nothing have a 1,000 gold lead for themselves. 1 minute remaining on the clock until that next Drake spawns. And Huhi rotating around, always looking to be the first one on the play, the first one somewhere else to facilitate something, trusting FBI to just sit down there in the bottom lane, farm it up, not worried about him. And instead, we'll see if they can make a move happen before this next Drake emerges. You can see that the vision has been placed down around the entrances to the Immortals jungle here. Yes, Insanity has that control ward off to his right, but it's up to Destiny to move forward into the river and try to find a little bit more vision, a little bit more control for Immortals if they want to try to fight for this second Drake.
And one thing I will say that's actually really nice about mythic itemization now for tanks is that in a game like this, in the old seasons, you would still want to stack armor because it's a Vayne and a Lucian, and that's most of their damage, and it's going to be support Karma. But that would mean you'd have no MR whatsoever against the Karma for late. So it's actually pretty nice that there is a bit of a split now. Just building towards your first mythic item is going to give you armor, but it also does give you some MR to help deal with the early laning phase. That should help out someday against this Karma quite a bit. And then from there, I expect him to just go pure armor, Thornmail, that sort of stuff, and just forgo building any additional MR.
Xerxes back down here in bottom lane, but with Closer showing up, Huhi's going in. They pull back Destiny with FBI charging in with the Killer Instinct. Kill onto Raze before the fight's even able to start up, but Immortals are calling in the backup. Xerxes goes forward looking for the stun. He finds FBI, and the enemy AD carry is the target. Huhi tries to stand and fight, tries to be the front line here, but the boy will fall. Immortals gets back a 1-for-1. Ryoma shows up, but it's too little too late. And that's all this fight is going to be, an even trade on both sides.
It is the 1-for-1. Someday now in the area, though, and he is kind of potentially in a flanking position. We'll see if 100 Thieves want to go up and try to contest for this, but it looks like both teams just going to reset, wait for their additional member to come back here. So no Dragon even attempted off the back of that. We'll see if 100 Thieves are just going to reset and then run straight back to the Dragon and try to start it up here one more time. Someday does have his teleport now, and he has that teleport a little bit earlier than Revenge. So if he just goes up straight towards topside, answers the Karma, it should be pretty much a free Dragon for them if they have that TP timer right down.
Back down in bottom lane, it's up to Raze to just keep on farming. We saw how he exploded when focused in the bottom lane, and here you go once more with Huhi's initiation.
Yeah, and honestly, Raze reacted really fast. Like, he instantly flashed away, but still, Huhi comes through and he still has the ultimate up. He's still able to connect with the Attract Repel, get on top of that Vayne. It is very difficult to create that space as the Vayne, and the counterplay was there, as Insanity was a lot faster on the roam than Ryoma. 100 Thieves going to be starting this up. The teleport is available for Karma, but with Udyr in mid lane, with Karma in mid lane, they're not going to contest this, so 100 Thieves will take their second Dragon straight.
All right, summoned the Rift Herald here in mid lane. Immortals are looking to get some gold here out of the turret plates. The Dragon goes over to the side of 100 Thieves, so Closer picking that one up here for the second time for his team. And 100 Thieves will continue just maintaining this slight gold lead. Immortals trying to close the gap a little bit with that Rift Herald. Now a 1v1 between the mid laners will not turn into much of anything as they both walk away.
Yeah, just going to be backing off there. But Immortals trading gold for the Dragon, going to be able to get the plates. But the problem is 100 Thieves are actually winning in both. They're up gold, they're up Dragons. Raze gets a nice little trade that potentially dissuades a dive coming through there onto Hecarim, but not going to mean much more than that. And it's interesting, where Raze is going to go here. I'm curious if he's going to go towards Shield Bow. You can see that he's playing overheal, or will he feel like he needs Kraken Slayer to really punch through this team? It's a tough decision because, oh, nice.
Whoa.
There.
Someday with the ulti, knocking Revenge back into the turret. But Revenge can quickly just walk on out. Karma is so difficult to deal with. The healing on the Empowered Tether, the shield, and the speed up that you can get. The champion is so capable of getting out of those kinds of situations that even though he's knocked back into the turret with no minions, Revenge doesn't even need a summoner spell to walk away.
Going to be able to escape pretty easily there, but you can see Someday is taking control of the lane, right? We go back to those earlier bot lane TP plays. Off of that, Someday was down to 10 CS. Now he's up 20, right? When you hit this certain point when you are doing these supportive builds that the early game is carried just by your champion kit. It doesn't actually matter what build you're going for because you're just on Doran's blades and Doran's rings and whatnot. At this point, the itemization that somebody's going towards is just more effective. The passive from Gragas, once you have some health under your belt, once you have that null magic mantle, you just don't really do anything to him as a supportive style Karma anymore. So Someday going to be comfortable in this lane, even has a blue buff to go with that. So going to be able to push this out no problem and going to be able to get to a point where he's incredibly tanky.
Rift Herald up and running here again. 100 Thieves, the ones aggroing this one. They know their opponents were able to get value off of turret plates the first time around. Granted, second Herald doesn't quite do the same, considering we're already past the point where the plating has fallen, but 100 Thieves still could get some big usage out of this one, taking the first turret of the game. Despite the fact that Immortals got that plate money, the entirety of the turret was not taken down, so the first gold bonus is still on the table.
Yep, and Raze is going down to that bottom lane. But as soon as 100 Thieves realized that wasn't going to be a full contest, they just sent their players back to their lanes. So FBI will miss a little bit. He's probably going to lose maybe 2 minions there, but he should be able to collect the rest. And it looks like he'll probably only even lose the 1 minion. So in a pretty good spot. Raze with the pickaxe is going to be going towards Kraken Slayer. So he's not going Shield Bow, which I think would be my preferred route in this game. I do think that this is higher risk, higher reward. But given how much engaged and how much CC there is over on the 100 Thieves side, I just don't feel like you can outplay a lot of it, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what you do. I don't think that you can avoid everything from Gragas and Hecarim and Rel and Orianna. So, the Shield Bow to me gives you enough of a pad that sometimes you can survive lifesteal through a lot of that initial damage and then potentially turn it around. And Vayne's DPS is so high anyway that it doesn't feel like you need the Kraken Slayer. So we'll see if it pays off for Raze. I mean, if he can position perfectly and avoid the engage, then he'll definitely shred them with this more aggressive build.
All right, checking in on the overall state of the game. Still very close, man. 2 Drake lead is the biggest difference here between the squads, as 100 Thieves have about 70 seconds before that next Drake spawns. If they grab this one, it immediately puts them at soul point and will force an answer out of Immortals. And although it's a Cloud Soul, this is a team that can do quite a lot with a Cloud Soul bonus. The flat movement speed, of course, is great, but especially the movement speed after ultis. When you have ults like Kai'Sa, like Rel, like Hecarim, that is a huge bonus in a team fight.
It's huge. I agree. And I think that as a result, we should be seeing Immortals fight for this. You know, they have their mythics completed, except for the support role where it's not going to be completed on the other side either. I feel like this is a pretty good window to try to scrap. I think that on Moonstone, you're already very effective as this Karma, and you have the Moonstone, you have double marksman, buff them up, shield them up, and try to get value from your super effective builds, you know, early on in this game. We'll see if this does finish it off. It's going to be close. Not quite.
Not
to
quite.
get the kill. And I gotta say, I don't love the timing, right? If it's not actually enough to kill the tower, wait until the dragon spawns, then drop it to actually draw their attention over towards that mid lane, as we're gonna have a little bit of a tickle fight up here in the top lane.
Karma Q with not a lot of AP versus Gragas auto healing whenever he takes a swig. Ends up being a difference of probably about 10 damage to his health bar.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like, even if you deal decent upfront damage, he just backs off and presses W a couple times. He's back to full. Immortals, though, on the dragon, but I think you want the Karma here, and they are going to be TPing now. We'll see.
Okay.
It's going to be all about the engage. Can 100 Thieves find that perfect engage? They've got to be getting it right off the bat, and Ryoma's very low on mana. That's actually pretty big here.
And remember as well, the Gragas is ready to go here. He jumps in for the initiation. Xerxes there in the front line. Dragon going to be taken very low. It's secured over by the side. 100 Thieves, but they end up losing the fight so far. He's already been killed. Xerxes on the chase. Insanity still looking for the chance for maybe a little bit more damage. But all in all, that's a Drake for 1 kill, and 100 Thieves will take that trade.
They'll definitely take that trade, especially since it was just the support kill. Destiny, though, pick here on closer potentially.
Destiny really wanting to make a move happen with that one, but a nice shockwave over the wall from Ryoma. Yes, his mana pool was very taxed going into that, but he still had enough left for the ultimate, and it puts Destiny in a spot where he cannot end up getting a kill for that play he tried to make.
It is interesting because he had enough mana there. I'm not sure if he actually had enough mana to use his combo when he engaged. That's one thing. It would have been very close. You know, if he had enough, he would have just barely had enough. Because if you actually look at his mana, he used his Q to move the ball. That's it. Look at his mana pool right now. Is that enough to do an RW? I'm actually not sure. It would be really, really close. It is enough now as he got a little bit back. I'm not sure if that was from a biscuit or what, but very on the edge. Either way, 100 Thieves coming out on top there. They do grab themselves the dragon, put themselves a soul point, and Immortals really are going to have to win this next fight, or it's pretty much going to be doomed, I think, against the composition that 100 Thieves have. When you give them the Cloud Soul to boot, it feels so incredibly hard to fight out of that situation.
But Immortals still do have a very close game state, ignoring the Dragons. If we're just looking at the gold overall of the players, the gold that Immortals have, they've kept this game incredibly close here. And we do know how powerful a Moonstone champion can be in a team fight, right? If Revenge is able to get multiple instances of damage, multiple procs off on that Moonstone, the healing, the shielding, the defensive power of that champion can do a lot of work in a 5v5.
And if you can get towards Ardent, like I think Ardent is definitely the play this game over, you know, Moonstaff, the more standard build. Staff of Flowing Water, I think, has a lot less value here. When you have Lucian, when you have the Vayne, you want to be going towards the Ardent, but the gold is going to be going more in the favor of 100 Thieves. They just knocked down 2 of those turrets, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to that next fight. As you said, they have the ability to win those fights, but a lot of that depends on getting vision early, right? If you can actually get over to the Dragon, clear out the 100 Thieves vision, be the first ones to the play, have pink wards behind you, covering your flanks from any potential TP flank or anything like that, then it's definitely winnable. But it's difficult to walk into an area like that and not have some sort of angle uncovered, not have somewhere that someday or a closer could be coming from. And if that happens and Vayne or Lucian get caught by the initial engage, they likely will not live to have any sort of a follow-up.
Back up here in top side, you can see that things continue. Business as usual. Neither one of these top laners really being able to make a dent and the other one's turret. This is the definition of the wet noodle fight up here between these two, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Meanwhile, on the other end of the map, you can see FBI just completing his second big item with the Collector. Still no second item there for Raze, but when that happens, I do want to make sure we look at that and where that is on the clock, because you're the one who said, Isaac, in the draft, once Vayne hits those 2 items, you're in trouble if you're the one getting shot by this champion. Once you have the Rage Blade with Kraken Slayer put together especially, anybody that she gets to free fire on is under serious threat.
They really are. It's just a matter of if you can actually have enough space to attack, right? And that's always the question. That's always the difficulty with Vayne. No one ever doubts the amount of damage this champion can put out. It's just, can you actually position effectively without dying and still dealing damage? And also the biggest question for me is, can he get enough gold in his pockets to complete the Rage Blade for the soul fight, right? Because you have a minute 10 right now, and I think that's why they're giving him mid lane wave. That's why he's farming the jungle camps. They know they gotta get to 2 items here on Raze prior to that fight, because that is going to be such an incredible burst of power for him, and he still needs some more gold to get there. FBI is already on 2 items. Ryoma's already on 2 items. You can see Insanity is on 2 of his own, and Revenge has completed his. He did decide to not go with the Ardent Sensor. Is just going to be prioritizing the Staff of Flowing Water there. And the move speed, of course, is still useful for Insanity and Raze, but I do think that Ardent Sensor is sometimes kind of overlooked, and this build can be just kind of defaulted to a lot of times.
30 seconds till the 4th Drake of the game and the possibility of a soul for the side of 100 Thieves. Immortals are all around. They have all 5 players here, not depending on a teleport this time. They want to make sure everybody's ready at the very start. Moving around as a unit, a big old clump off to the side to approach from a different angle. Sunday's still at mid. If Immortals find a chance to fight here, they have a 5v4 without Sunday's immediate interaction. Drake is still 5 seconds away. Immortals controlling the area for now. Closer approaching from the top angle. Destiny sitting in the brush on top of the control ward, making sure he's able to zone Closer away. Closer now separated from the rest of the team. Devastating charge, wanting to get all the way back out. Raze taking the damage. A nice shockwave coming through. Raze is already down. Insanity about to follow. 100 Thieves taking the fight here, but a nice 4-man pulverize buys a little bit more time. There's your damage. There's your wombo. There's your combo. Double kill over to FBI, and they are not done yet. Someday with a flash, and he throws out the ulti and tells him to have a drink. Triple kill for FBI, and a massive team fight win earns 100 Thieves a Cloud Soul.
This is Soul, and I want to see if they're going to run up towards Baron after it. They don't have to if they don't feel like they want to risk it, but geez, there's still 20 seconds with Xerxes dead, 25 on Revenge. I think this should be Baron for them as well. And we'll get to see it one more time in the Honda performance play. Closer going around. Immortals trying to collapse onto him. And Raze did a good job, you know, with the self-peel, with the early flash, but it's so tough to actually avoid that engage. You know, he flashes away from the engage from Huhi, but the Rel ultimate pulls you in from both sides. So even though he clears the distance to get to the other side of the Rel, he still gets snapped back in, still gets CC'd up, and goes down immediately, even using the flash there, Insanity flashing away to survive. But that is always the concern. The engage is so powerful on the 100 Thieves side, and you have this mid to low range double marksman composition, that how do they stay safe away from that engage and also deal damage? And that's the question that Immortals are going to have to answer if they want to have any chance in this game, because now you're down 4,000 gold. The engage became even more powerful with the Cloud Soul, and the gold lead likely is going to extend here during this Baron buff.
Good on Insanity for finding as much damage as he did in the previous fight, but when you compare those damage bars on that graph, really, he's the standout for Immortals that was able to have that output in that previous fight. The rest of it was just 100 Thieves controlling everything. They've got the Soul, they've got the Baron, 4,000 gold leads about to become 5 with that mid lane tier 2 turret falling. There's still 2 turrets to take in the top lane outside of the base. Sunday's finally getting the opportunity to take down that tier 1 turret that stood for so long here in this game. And 100 Thieves can now collect the tier 2 in the bottom lane, tier 2 in the top lane, and just pick up all this freestanding gold across the map.
And Rageblade does come through now for Raze, but the problem is FBI got paid there. He got a triple kill. They got the Baron. They're getting towers. He bought a full extra item, right? He's on PD now, so you're still 1 full item behind the curve here as Raze. Plus, they're picking up all these extra towers. Like you said, the gold lead is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger here. It is going to be so incredibly hard for Immortals to really get anything done, I think, from this point in the game. And 100 Thieves have just played a really strong game, controlled it feels like pretty much start to finish, and executed on everything they need to execute on. So Immortals now will need a bit of a miracle. You know, there's got to be some sort of incredible engage really from Destiny. He's the only one that is playing a champion that has some sort of X factor, it feels like. You know, Udyr running in and bear slapping you, it's not going to do it, right?
No.
You know, it's got to be Destiny catching multiple people. But here's the problem. He's level 8. Ryoma's 16. FBI's 14. Like, you're just going to instantly die after your combo. So you pretty much have to be perfect with that engage for it to mean anything when you're that far down in XP.
And with the Baron buff, that means that 100 Thieves get to take their first inhibitor of the game without a fight breaking out. The entire time, Someday was split pushing in the mid lane, setting things up to take down the second inhibitor turret of the game immediately thereafter. With inhibitor number 2 under fire, Immortals have to make the decision. Do you want to fight for this? Do you want to go
They
in?
don't have flash. They can't.
It looks like it's a no. They're trying. You can see Xerxes constantly moving back and forth, looking for any sort of an angle, but it's just not there, and 100 Thieves get 2 in his.
I mean, it's so brutal because you don't have any of your playmaking tools, right? You know, Alistar's the only one who could do anything. He has no flash. Insanity and Raze both used their flash in the previous fight. Ryoma didn't use his flash. FBI didn't use his flash. Huhi didn't use his flash. Like, they won the fight so heavily and didn't have to spend the resources, right? So Immortals is just behind in all regards. If you try to go for that engage and there's no flash in either your carries, pretty much guaranteed who's going to catch you with a flash RW and be able to combo you in for a shockwave, and that would just be GG. So they make the tough call to just give up the double inhib, and they're going to be praying that they can just have a bunch of gold funnel into them, somehow keep that third inhib alive, and maybe make a miracle comeback. But it's looking like 100 Thieves have this pretty much all wrapped up.
Someday goes for the ulti here as he disengages when Immortals look for maybe an angle to get some damage down onto the big front line of 100 Thieves. But that tier 2 turret in the top lane is now under fire. Super minions marching down the other 2 lanes where the inhibitors have already fallen. 100 Thieves with that Baron got so much value out of it with the 2 inhibs. They don't even need another Baron before they can pressure into the enemy base. You can see it's still longer than 3 minutes before either one of those inhibitors respawn. And when you're Immortals in this situation, those 3 minutes feel like an eternity. And for 100 Thieves, they're now just pushing straight up into inhibitor turret number 3. Xerxes on the front line, buying a little bit of time. Yes, he hits Huhi just a little bit, but not really enough to make a big dent in him. Revenge will chase away the enemy jungler, but now the push continues. They're just committing to this for a little bit of extra damage here. They will need the minion wave. They need to remove the backdoor protection with the power of the minions here. Super minions, in the meantime, applying pressure onto the Nexus turrets as 100 Thieves.
They gotta go this wave, otherwise they're just gonna lose the tower.
Yep, they're continuing the march right now. Immortals looking for any sort of a chance to stop and try to fight. Xerxes here on the front line once more with the Udyr, but Udyr is not an army himself. Closer used the Ghost back there just in case Immortals committed. He wanted to be ready to immediately respond. Demolish proc just about ready to put some more damage here into the tier 3 turret top lane. 100 Thieves are not giving up. It is a slow but steady process wearing down this tier 3 turret. Couple auto attacks coming in. Xerxes starting off the fight here in the middle of everybody, but a very nice Someday ulti with a follow-up shockwave onto Destiny. Onslaught of shadows into the back line, and 100 Thieves keeps it up. Huhi with the ulti jumping into the remaining players. Insanity taking the damage. FBI taking the kill. 100 Thieves taking the fight, but they lose their AD carry. Raze is able to fight back. He's shooting everybody to pieces. The Vayne was not focused, and the damage is coming down.
Oh, no.
Raze might just die here at the very end, but a shield at the last possible moment. It keeps it going. It keeps Immortals alive. The karma peel is real, and Immortals will hold the line.
It's the Vayne dream. The byline ace for Immortals there, and the Elder is up, so they can actually go get Elder right now as well. You gotta leave someone to defend your base. So they will go back to that. They're gonna lose their Nexus towers otherwise. Raze coming up huge for the team here. We watch the Bud Light ace one more time. The initial play does look good. They get the kill onto Xerxes, but they committed so many spells. Notice Shockwave just on Destiny. You know, the Hecarim ult into the backline just on Destiny. The engage comes through. Everyone is piling onto Insanity though. So FBI flashes forward and gets condemned against the wall there by by Raze, who's able to kite back towards the Nexus, turn it around, almost kind of through here a little bit as he kind of, I don't know exactly what that was. It looked like, honestly, just a misclick on a move command, moving a little bit too far forward, getting hit by the Rel stun, but still playing it very, very well overall, kiting it out, getting the triple, keeping their hopes alive. He's got a PD off the back of that, but 100 Thieves are on the Baron, and their top lane inhibitor did die to minions, so Immortals got triple inhibited.
Immortals with no inhibitors standing,
It's
but
gone.
the bottom and mid lane inhibitors respawning in under 1 minute. Baron goes over to 100 Thieves here for the second time this game. They still have a lead, they still have a Cloud Soul, and they have a lot of map control here for the next couple minutes.
Really, it's going to be for 100 Thieves, just play safe until the Elder ends, and then you should just be able to walk in Baron waves in all 3 lanes and probably just win. There is a window, though, for Immortals while you have that Elder to potentially find a team fight win, right? The Elder buff is so powerful that maybe gives you enough of an edge to get something done, but as soon as that expires, I expect 100 Thieves to be full court press, push in all the lanes here with the Baron buff, knock down those inhibitors that are going to be respawning in mid and bot, and just push in all the supers, and it becomes this difficult situation for Immortals where you're so busy trying to kill off Baron buff minions that you can't deal with them and the enemy champions at the same time.
It's all about Raze. If this guy can stay alive and do what he did in the last fight, Immortals still have a hope. Up to 3.5 items plus the boots. One of the remaining slots also filled with a stopwatch. He's got the power, man. It's possible. Let's see if they can find it. Destiny loses half HP. Xerxes looking to go in. Disengage from Someday. Holy cow, his closer fast. Someday's still also here in the front line, skirting around a little bit. Couple more auto attacks come through. Raze did use Final Hour in that one, so Immortals have to be careful that Vayne does not have nearly her normal team fighting power here for the next 30 seconds or so. 100 Thieves will
Supers are in
continue
the
to push
base.
down mid lane.
Yep, I mean, Immortals wanted to force because they still have the Elder, right? That's what that is. They're trying to do it. So all 100 Thieves' objective was run away, don't die, wait it out. There's only 15 more seconds on that. And as you answer, look at that wave in top. That is going to kill your Nexus Tower so fast if you don't answer that. But as you go back to answer it, the Elder is expiring, and now 100 Thieves still have a minute on the Baron buff. They can take down all your inhibitors and probably end the game here.
Inhibitor number 1, see you later. Number 2, where's it at? We've still got 2 minutes left on that third one. Up there in the top lane that's been dead as well. 100 Thieves continuing to earn themselves more map pressure by killing off these objectives. Raze stepping forward, but who he goes in, Raze is down and the game is over. Shutdown credit over to Someday without the Vayne still alive. Nobody's got the damage to win the fight for Immortals. Huhi with the big engage with the snap decision, kills off the enemy AD carry, takes down Immortals, and 100 Thieves, there's nothing left to do but walk it into the Nexus. They might pad the stats here a little bit, or wait, they're padding them the wrong way. Either way, it don't matter too much. The game is done. 34 minutes in, it's 100 Thieves. Still looking to have a strong showing here in Week 6 and finish the regular season off strong, taking down Immortals.
Moving into a tie for second place. They're only 1 game back of first at this point. Really nicely played there, 400 Thieves. The picture-perfect engage at the end from Huhi, catching both the carries. The Lucian, the Vayne, both go down immediately, and with that, any chance Immortals had of hanging on in that game. I really think this one was very well played, though, from 100 Thieves, start to finish, survive the top lane in that melee versus range matchup. You have incredible engage. They utilize bot lane prio to stack the dragons, focused on that the entire game long, and you forced this double marksman composition to come to you and fight you at that dragon pit where you were going to be able to attack them from multiple angles, which I really thought was the key to their victory.
And there at the very end, too, it just, that final team fight showcased what you had been talking about the entire game. Saying there's no way, no matter how good you play, even if you're a sophisticated sentient AI from 1,000 years into the future just designed to play League of Legends, there's so much engage. There's so much CC. Something's going to hit you. And at the very end, it was Huhi hitting Raze, finding that engage that just sealed Immortals' fate.
We did get to see that one team fight win, for Immortals in the base. And that's kind of what they were hoping like all the fights would look like, right? Where you absorb the engage and they don't kill off your main carry, and then you kite back and then you chase them down and you kill them all off. But every other fight went the way of 100 Thieves. because there's just such an overwhelming amount of engage, and you're not playing this long range carry. It's so difficult to stay safe from that. Immortals, took their shot, but unfortunately will fall. And I'm not sure if that mathematically eliminates them from playoffs, but it's going to be incredibly difficult. Now, 2 games back of 6th place, EG at 9 wins now, and you only have the 2 games remaining. So going to be incredibly difficult if it's not already eliminated.
Well, that's going to do it for Azael and myself. Everyone at home, thank you all so much for sticking with us through the trials and tribulations of this game. We're going to a break here once more. Once we're back, we're going to hear from Someday in the Verizon post-game interview, so don't y'all go anywhere.
I didn't order a pizza.
I know, but that Parker promo saved me so much on my insurance. Brought you a little something special.
Parker, State Farm offers everyone surprisingly great rates.
You're the man.
And you want the real deal? Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back to the LCS. We have 100 Thieves Someday standing on by for our Verizon post-game interview. We had a very unique situation here today. Someday, how did you and the team manage to handle the challenges as well as the draft changes that came with the pause?
It was kind of unhappy situation for us, but we can't really change anything. So we were trying to doesn't affect to our perform or condition. So we're trying to keep more chill.
Yeah, and in the end, those conditions worked out very well for you to secure the victory. As far as speaking to you directly, we haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since before 100 Thieves had some of those challenges in game. How do you feel about 100 Thieves' recent performances in addition to the changes since bringing on Ryoma?
We were kind of struggling a lot with like confidence because we had to fight, but we didn't like make space to fight. So we're trying to more with confidence, and we were trying to have confident.
Which is very important for the team considering what is on the horizon. Playoffs are so soon, and you yourself have been outspoken of wanting to achieve things for your career, what many feel that you deserve. So how are you approaching these last few games with playoffs being there and trying to best prepare and secure them for yourself?
As I say, we need to keep like improve about like confidence so we can play like more aggressively, and I like to that play style, so I know that kind of condition we got, so we were trying more like better.
Yeah, keep that confidence on the rise, and we get to see it all on the Rift someday. Thank you so much for stopping by and allowing us to chat up after that game. With that, we do still have plenty of action on the horizon, my friends. Stay tuned, because game number 4 is coming at you real quick.